Now, of course, people are asking me about my thoughts on this whole Alton Sterling situation. Now, this is going to be one of my longer videos, but there's generally three positions that I can take when a scenario as such, comes about. First position, I can use this as an opportunity to start pointing to the whole institutionalized racism. Saying that, oh, here we go again, another black person killed by a cop. Point to all the statistics in the world saying, well, when we take into consideration our population, black people are more likely to get shot by way of a cop. Act as if I'm fearful for my life. I'm being hunted out here. Start grasping for every recent scenario. White person does this, but when a black person does that, he gets shot. Hey, white kid rapes a unconscious girl, gets 6 months jail or whatever in probation. Black person sells CDs and he gets shot. I can go that route. There has to be some type of justice. Black lives matter. Second position I can take is I can say that he had it coming. He was a criminal. He was a criminal. He had it coming. He's a pedophile at that. Sex offender. I can say that he shouldn't have been resisting. He was reaching for a gun. The cops were just doing their job. He should have been resisting. He's asking for it. All lives matter. I can use this, and this is the third position. I can use this as an opportunity to say that every cop is a crook. They're all murderers. This is what happened when you have those authority figures. It's not about class, or it's not about race. It is about class. But all three of those positions are very easy to take. There's nothing thought-provoking about them. It's the same old crap. You're going to see 100 million videos of people taking those positions. It's going to be from guys like me, just regular old commentators. You're going to see leaders of organizations. Of course, you're going to see the entertainers. They're going to be taking those three positions. Easy. It's going to be nothing new. Now, while I may accept some of those positions, I reject them all as if they are the position. It's the right position, either of those in particular. Now, as a libertarian and someone, of course, I kind of adopt a little bit of the Chicago school, but I'm more subscribed to the Austrian, School of Economics way of thinking. So I have to take into account the individuals. I have to talk about the role they have in place, and more so I have to approach it as if, I'm trying to find an actual solution. Because it's way too easy to bicker. It's way too easy to do that. And by solution, I don't mean criminal justice reform. I don't mean calling for the resignation of government officials or, saying the police chief has to resign. Because none of that says how we get from point A to point B. It doesn't say how we even got to this point. It's not an actual solution. All these do is just place blame on one entity, as if the other entities had absolutely nothing to do with the culture, has nothing to do with the society or the setup that we have right now. And this is why it keeps getting revisited. But what is my position? Honestly, for me, it's very frustrating as a voluntarist as well as a black person. There's a political monopoly on black communities. That's just what it is. Other ideas, they're uninvited. Trust me, I speak from experience. I was a former leftist. I didn't know what the hell libertarianism was until I was in college. Hadn't even heard of the word. But that just goes to show of that political monopoly. You find me a black community, I will find you leftist politicians within their government. You find me a prominent black organization, I will find you a bunch of leftist leaders within that organization. You find me a black media source or a media source that tries to cater to blacks, you will find a bunch of leftists. And they act as if it's the state's job, this whole idea of collectivism, but just the state's job to orchestrate our advancement. We need funding here. We need inclusion here. We need government to do something. And it shows in our voting habits. Each of the major elections, we are, in terms of racial minority, we are first place when it comes to racial minorities voting for one particular party. These last few elections, it was 90% plus. Only racial minority in the 90 percentile voting for one particular alignment and ideology. Leftists. And I'm not saying this to turn this into some penis measuring contest between conservatives and liberals. But on the platform of leftists, it's this collectivism. It's the expansion of the state. It's undermining the individual as if you don't own yourself. It's undermining of self-ownership. Don't even acknowledge the fact that you own yourself. So what you see right now is exactly what you get when you combine that and you think that it's the obligation of the collective to do something about said situations and said scenarios, orchestrate how people should be running their lives. This is exactly what you get. But for whatever reason, people think as if government is detached. They think that the police are detached from government. Not understanding that they are the law enforcers. They are usually the first people that you come in contact with when it comes to the law. Every law, it doesn't matter even if it's about social services, it's a coercive act. It is. You break it, trust me, you'll find out. No matter what that law is. For the better or for the worse. Coercive acts enforced by law enforcers. The more laws you have, the more you're going to come in contact with the enforcers of the law. That's just what it is. And because they are law enforcers at the end of the day, they don't play by the same rules that you play by. They are above those laws, obviously. It's just fundamental. To enforce it, they have to be above those laws. They have to have the, I don't want to say the consent, because they do strong on, but in order to kind of enforce these laws and them to be seen as legitimate, they have to be above it. I can't go kick your door down, and see this. I kick your door down because you're smoking a plant and lock you up in a cage. No, I don't smoke weed. I'm just using that as an analogy. I can't do that. Or I'm gonna see the different consequences. Is more what I'm trying to say. State does it every day. I can't go mow your grass. Not even offering you the service. Mowing your grass without your consent. And then demanding that you give me money for mowing your grass, even though you didn't ask me for it. And saying, if you don't like it, just move, just leave. I can't do that to you. But the state can. But for whatever reason, people worship the state. Definitely black folks. That's the frustrating thing, because they worship the state. The very thought of getting rid of it, and again, trust me, I know. The very thought of getting rid of it, they will tear you apart. You talk about getting rid of certain programs. You talk about getting rid of certain departments. Departments of, I want this department abolished, I want the state abolished, or I want to scale back on it at the very least. That strikes fear in them. Definitely their leaders. That they keep boosting in the power and wealth. Because again, they smart. But it's Stockholm Syndrome, because they are protecting the very people that they claim are oppressing them. The same exact entity. I've done numerous articles on this talking about how if blacks simply acknowledge history, they will be libertarians. Why? I'm not saying that just to be saying it. I'm saying because from day one, slave codes, black codes, all the Supreme Court cases, the Jim Crow laws, racism being essentially mandated. It's not up for debate. You would think black folks would be the first people to not worship the state, but they do. And that's what's so frustrating about this. Situations as such will forever occur, so as long as you keep doing the same exact thing and bumping your head into the wall expecting something different. I would think by now you realize this. It's not about you getting the right people in office. It's not about that. It is not. It will never be about that. Oh, this person cares. We just got to get guys like Bernie Sanders in. No, that's not how this works. He's a government worshipping statist. And the same guys that you say that, are the source of your oppression, he's expanding their law enforcers. He's expanding the state. So again, just out of sheer logic, doesn't matter what his intentions is, there will forever be law enforcement. And it is a hotbed. It is an attraction for those certain types of people that you, again, because it's one thing. If I go walk, if I walk in your house without your consent, you might air me out if you got a pistol. State does it, it's a completely different story. I don't know why people think people aren't smart to use the government for their own personal, benefit and use it to do these very, very immoral and bad things. This is exactly why it's not even close. I believe 250 million people in the last century alone were killed by the state. That's not even including wars. This is what you get when you worship. This is exactly what you get. No matter how much you shout reform, no matter how much you shout about institutionalized racism, you will continue to get this. So as long as your core belief is this collectivist mindset that they have to play a role in your advancement. This is why I'm always saying that these black folks, you guys, and it's not just, because there's going to be those people nitpick what I'm trying to say as if it applies strictly to black people. That is not the case. I'm just speaking to them right now. Because again, this is what the whole narrative right now is about. Stop expecting them to, and I don't care who it is, conservative, liberal, it was leftists, they got the monopoly, and they generally try to cater to your emotions, act, no, we're doing this for you. I don't even give a damn if it was conservatives. The entity in general is a monopoly on force and use of violence. And it is, again, it's just a major attraction for those same people that will orchestrate your destruction and have by proof. And this is why I don't usually align with those organizations such as Black Lives Matter. Because a lot of their, members, solutions and the NAACPs, I'm not saying they're the same. And I'm not saying that I don't agree with some of their, and I'm not cool with some of the members of those groups and organizations. I'm saying generally they tend to be hardcore statists. Whether they like to admit it, that's just what it is. They're hardcore statists. And so as long as that's the idea that they have to play a role, when we realize we own ourselves and we start talking about accountability, we will see advancement. When we realize we own ourselves, stop expecting them to change our lives for us. That's and again, in our voting habits and in our ideology, it's this constant cycle. Constant cycle. And it will forever be repeated. And the same goes, and again, I can't let the law boys get off scotch-free. And this is going to be so difficult because there's going to be those people that are, well, the cop is doing his job. I don't care about none of that. And I'm not even necessarily, when I'm talking right now, I'm not necessarily talking about this actual position or this particular scenario with, Sterling. But at what point do they say, okay, maybe this legislation isn't right. Maybe all of this is what I'm doing isn't right. Maybe it's not right. When do they do that? When do they, again, start acknowledging themselves as individuals rather than hiding behind a badge, hiding behind a magic suit? When will that happen? So I am not saying that one entity is to blame. I won't even say one entity more so is to blame. I can lean to kind of say that only because, again, I love to talk about that accountability because, again, it has to be acknowledged. But in the same respects, every entity has their role in the setup you have right now. If you at once think that you had nothing to do with this and just innocent victim, bystander, most times it's a complete lie. I'm going to call it exactly what it is, a complete lie. And that's just what it is.